Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Cybersecurity, 9 Ways to Protect Yourself, featuring Wendell Tucker. My name is Eric Danielson. I'm the Communications and Client Services Administrator for AFP. We are recording this webinar, and we will record future webinars as well. We are going to be holding a Q&A session afterwards, and we will stop recording before the Q&A. And then this video will be posted on our website within the next few days. So in order to make sure this runs smoothly, we have muted your mics and disabled your videos. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can use the Zoom chat feature and just post your question in there. So you'll just click the little chat icon, it'll open a window, and then you can type in your questions. So once we're finished, we will unmute everybody, and then you'll have the option to ask your questions during the Q&A. So if you do have any suggestions for future webinars, you can post those in the chat as well, or you can just, if you want to call us or email us after the presentation, we can take them that way as well. So with that, I will hand things off to Terry.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Well, as Eric mentioned, this month we're focusing on cybersecurity, and it just seems to be top of mind for so many people. Wendell had sent us 9 things that people can focus on to protect themselves. So that's why we called it 9 Ways to Protect Yourself. Welcome, Wendell. It's great to have you. I don't know if you maybe want to kind of give a little background on what you do.
Sure. So I have had an IT company it's been about 28 years now, started in 95. And I was telling Terry earlier that we started trying to keep computers running and getting the networks going and that sort of thing. And I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, our focus has very much kind of switched over to the security side of things, as everyone's just trying to make sure their data and conversion up to the cloud and that sort of thing is secure, and the stuff we hear on the news every day. We've been working with AFP for, I don't know, at least 5 years now. I'm not sure exactly how long, and help maintain their network and their firewall and their endpoint protection and all that. So I'm looking to just kind of go through what I think are some of the basics that people can look out for to secure themselves. Happy to answer any questions at the end, like they had mentioned. Yeah, we've got some slides here, and we'll kind of go through just some of the basic stuff. A lot of it you're probably already going to know, so hopefully, it doesn't sound condescending or anything, but in the same breath, there's some real basic things that if you don't know, it would be good for people to know.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so one of the easiest things and most important things that you can do is use multi-factor authentication. Most people are probably familiar with this. It's when you get a code on your phone as an extra layer to log into a website. I can't overemphasize how important this is, and it's relatively easy to set up on your accounts. It will head off 98% of the hacks or people getting through with a password that was compromised. So I can't overemphasize this. It's the first slide for a reason. It's very simple to set up. If you log into, your bank has probably has this enforced already, your financial institutions, that sort of thing. But even your Facebook account and your Gmail account, any account that you have online, we highly recommend that you set up MFA. It's free. There's no extra charge. Typically, if you go into your account settings, they'll call it 2-layer or MFA, multi-factor authentication. So yeah, we highly recommend that. Email accounts, social media accounts, bank, any account that you would not want people to get into, we highly recommend this. Very simple to set up, code sent to your phone. Another way that it's done, and maybe you've run into this, is where they'll ask you to use an app or an authenticator where when you sign up, they'll have you scan a QR code, and it actually, probably the two most popular ones are Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. They're free. You can download them from the Apple or Android app stores. And then essentially, instead of texting you a message, they'll have you scan the QR code with your phone with the authenticator, and then that authenticator generates the code instead of you receiving a text.
Yeah, and we have that window with one of our broker dealers. That's the direction they're going versus the two-factor. So I am seeing that way to authenticate kind of creeping in a little bit more with some of the things we're using.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's correct. The authenticators are more secure than text messages. So there's all sorts of details, but essentially there's potential that a text message could be intercepted, where the authenticators, kind of lock it down even further. So, I would decide on one. I use the Microsoft Authenticator, but we use a lot of Microsoft products. The Google Authenticator works well as well. The one thing I do like about the Microsoft Authenticator that is free is it's also a password manager, and we'll have another slide on that. But it's one app that can keep both of your passwords and your authentication codes in one spot, as opposed to having a separate password manager, which Google's does not have.
Okay. All right. On to number 2.
Yes. So, software updates on both your phone and your computers is one of the simplest things to do. They're constantly pushing out updates when they find a security flaw or opening. Definitely Windows, keep up to date. Typically that happens automatically, but it's not a bad idea to go to your settings inside Windows, and you can go to Windows Update, and you can check for updates manually. There's a button there, and then you can click on Install, and it will keep you up to date. But that's really important too, because if vulnerability comes out, that's often what the hackers will try to use, and if you stay up to date, that heads off a lot of stuff. You have the endpoint protection that you have, antivirus. Used to be called the antivirus. They now typically refer to it as endpoint protection. I think we have another slide on this, but endpoint protection is kind of like the next level above antivirus, where it also protects you from website links and URLs and that sort of thing, not just files on your computer like antivirus does. So make sure that's always up to date. Any apps that you're using. And we recommend, if you're not using an app on your phone or on your computer, you can uninstall it in the control panel or the settings. Just go uninstall the apps you don't need.
Yeah. And this can take a lot of time. It's one thing you almost have to build into your habits or time factor to say once a week or once a month or something like that, maybe once a quarter. Kind of going through and checking it off the list that you've done a little bit of this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and a lot of it is automated, but it is good to kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you think it's happening and you find out it's not. So
yeah, that's true. Okay. Number 3.
All right. So endpoint protection is highly recommended on your computer. Windows comes with something called Microsoft Defender, and it is a good free program. It works pretty well. It's definitely better than nothing, and just kind of gets updated with Windows and that in the background. So as a baseline, Windows Defender does a decent job, and it's free. It comes with your Windows. But we do recommend that you actually get a third-party program for your endpoint protection. And there's a lot of good companies out there. We big fan of Bitdefender is what we use for most of our clients. There's also Malwarebytes, which works pretty well. You probably heard of Norton and McAfee. The Norton and McAfee do a good job, but the reason, and they're two of the biggest players, but we have found they slow down computers about 30%. And for that reason, that's part of the reason we've settled on Bitdefender. So you can do your research and pick one out, but those are some of the ones we recommend would be Bitdefender, Malwarebytes. The endpoint protection, like I mentioned, not only checks for viruses on your computer, but it will often check for phishing emails before they hit your inbox. If you click on a link in an email, it will try to protect you. If it recognizes that link is not safe and would bring you to a ransomware site or a site that might have a virus on it, tries to protect you against some of that stuff too. And that's why they call it endpoint as opposed to just antivirus.
Yeah.
So we do recommend that you do that. You're typically looking at about $60 a year to get one of those, or sign up for 3 years and you can save some money. And those typically will update themselves once you get them installed. Or you can get a family pack if you have 3 or 5 computers.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I'd mentioned to you, I am using Bitdefender on my phone. I use it for the VPN, and I know we're going to talk about that also.
Yes.
But yeah, it has worked very well. Okay.
Backing up your data. This is another one of those pretty important things you can do if you have important information on your computer, which we all do. And whether it's your QuickBooks files, Quicken files, you know, pictures of the family from the last 20 years, there's, you know, obviously stuff we do not want to lose. So everyone's heard of ransomware, which is probably the most common thing that's kind of happening now. And that is basically, if you click on the wrong link or something gets through your computer, they will lock you out of the data on your computer. And then they say, if you give us $500 or $5,000, we'll give you a code to unlock it. And then you don't even know if that code's going to work after you pay them, and your data's gone. So you do want to back up your stuff. There's different ways to back up your information. So some of the most common ones, you know, Microsoft OneDrive comes with Windows. The free version only gives you 5 gigabytes. And if you have the paid for version, you have a full terabyte. And basically, you'll have the option to go in and set the settings to back up your documents and your desktop and your pictures. And it will automatically sync those as long as you're logged into OneDrive. It's a pretty inexpensive way to back up, as long as you keep all your important files in the 3 folders that it will back up for you. So you can Google how to do that. You can pay for the upgrade if you want the terabyte. 5 gigabytes is not going to be enough if you have a bunch of pictures and a few videos in there. It's the same thing as kind of Google Drive if you're in a Google environment. Dropbox, you've probably heard of, same sort of thing. Those 3 applications just back up specific folders on your computer. And so you do need to make sure, if you have a Quicken file, that it's not in some different folder outside of your documents or outside of your desktop, because obviously if it's just grabbing those, then you're going to be out of luck. There's third-party backups that are reasonably priced. A very common one is called Carbonite. And that one can do a full backup of your entire computer. It's not very expensive. I don't know the current pricing. But if you want a full computer backup, Carbonite is something to consider if you don't have OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox. And Windows does also come with the ability, if you go to your settings in Windows, you can back up to an external hard drive, which are very inexpensive. For $50, you can get a terabyte or 2 terabyte external hard drive. And they call it File History, is kind of their new backup system. And File History backs up documents, desktop, and pictures. They also have, if you go to some legacy, if you click on Windows backup, it's called like Windows 7 backup. I have no idea why they haven't updated that. You can run that as well, and that does a full backup of your entire hard drive. So that would be free. and you can schedule it to run once a week or something like that. So there's different options that are all pretty reasonably priced, but we highly recommend it because we've had calls from people that have lost pictures, from their family for the last 20 years. And it's a heartbreak when we can't get them back because the hard drive crashed or something happened. So yeah, can't overemphasize that.
It's very true. Very true. Phone protection.
Yeah, so we all have our phones. I think up until recently, it's been kind of a secondary thought of, oh, I should keep my phone protected too, because all my stuff's on my computer. But, as time's gone on, we basically have everything that's on our computer is pretty much on our phones as far as access to, our cloud services and everything else. So phone protection, it is something you need to be aware of because it really is almost as important as protecting your computer. It's not really as obvious a path maybe as to how to do that. So we'll just mention a couple things to keep in mind to protect your phone. If you have Verizon, they put something on the phone that's free, or you can download it from the App Store. It's called Verizon Digital Secure. And you can run a manual scan. It will check for apps that could be malicious on your phone. That's primarily it. It'll check for some of the things. There's a free version, and then you can also do a paid for version. And the paid for version then will give you some of I'll talk about the VPN and additional kind of protection. So that's something to consider. It's probably already on your phone. If it's not, you can download that from the App Store. Make sure your phone's kept up to date. Go to settings, check go to about or updates, and make sure you have the most up-to-date OS. Same reason as you would for your computers. I would say remove any old apps you're not using because, we often find that there's an app that maybe had some vulnerability in it. So don't download flashlight apps. Don't download apps that you don't need because that's where a lot of the malicious actors will try to get you is you download a flashlight app and all of a sudden they have access to every bit of the data that's allowed on your phone. And so I would say keep your apps to what you use and uninstall what you don't. The Digital Secure will try to check for any apps that might have gotten through too. You can pay for like Terry had mentioned, she has Bitdefender, which is good for the mobile devices as well. And one of the primary things with the phones that you do want to keep in mind is the VPN. It's a virtual private network. When you're on your home network, not so important. But if you're in a hotel and you're using the Wi-Fi in any public location, a VPN is a very good idea because when you get on somebody else's network, there's the possibility that they can get access to your phone through that network or access to the data that's traveling through that network.
Yeah,
and with
Wendell, I just to mention, I read an article about the juice jacking.
Yes.
You can kind of mention what that is. That sounds a little scary.
Yeah, so juice jacking is, it's been in the headlines, and that it has to do with people like going to charge their phones at the airport. It's some public, little USB plug-in. I was on a plane the other day and my battery was running low while I was watching a movie on my phone, and I was hesitant to plug into the charger on the plane. Just because, again, you're introducing yourself to a different network, or someone what they're finding is are able to put malicious software into those USB jacks and the hardware behind them to infect your phone. So I carry a portable charger that I bought on Amazon for $20, and it will charge my phone probably 3 times. And I or would recommend to charge your phone on the road that way instead of just plugging into public access points, because that is another way that they get stuff onto your phone. And
it kind of reminds me of the gas stations and sticking your credit card in and somebody would have put a device on there to get your information. This is
Yeah.
kind of what that reminds me of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to keep up with it all because they're coming at you from every angle and, you know,
Yeah.
ways maybe you don't even think of. And that's one of the new ones in the headlines. So, you know, and you try to use common sense, but sometimes common sense, it's just not that common because you're not, you know, you just don't realize that they could get at your information that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, so on the VPNs, we would recommend those for any laptops you use where you're using public Wi-Fi. And again, that's because it will encrypt your information if you're sending passwords to log into your accounts and that sort of thing. So, you know, the Nord does, there's a Nord VPN you could sign up for on your phone, the Verizon Digital Secure, the Bitdefender. If you pay for the premium plan, we'll give you a VPN. So that's just something to keep in mind because the hotels and that sort of thing too are a place where they'll try to get to your information.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Phishing.
All right, so you've probably heard of phishing, but that's when you get an email where people try to fool you to clicking on a link that it might look like it's from Microsoft, but it's not. It might look like it's from your bank. It's not. It could be FedEx. It could be any, you know, fake email that is sent to you. And you click on the link and essentially that link will take you to a site which will try to install malware on your computer. So this is one of the most popular ways that they get to people. So there are some things you can look out for in your emails. You want to make sure that the from address is actually from the bank and not from a Gmail account or some obscure account. Before you click on any links, you can hover over it with your mouse and see where it's going to take you. We pretty much just recommend you don't click on any links you are not 100% certain where they're from. And if you're in doubt, you're going to be better off going to your bank, finding the website, and then logging in that way rather than clicking on a link they might provide you in the email or the financial institution or whatever. You know, just try to be a little bit skeptical before you click on anything in an email. And we would highly recommend that if you have any doubts at all, don't do it and delete it. And you can go to the website to log on. Yeah, keep your eye out. And it's not just emails. It can now be text messages they're using it for. Sometimes they do it with phone calls and they say, this is the bank. We need a code that was sent to you to log in to finish whatever we're doing, and it's not. So just, you know, just be aware that those are some of the ways people try to get to you. I don't know if I made any other notes here. Yeah, poor spelling and grammar. You know, just be on the lookout for any emails or texts.
So Wendell, I just have one question on this one, and I went to a financial planning program. One of the people there was using a program to filter emails, SaneBox. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it seems like it's helping to reduce the clutter, prioritize emails a little bit, and help eliminate some of these emails that you might get that you didn't ask for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, Microsoft, if you have, we use Microsoft 365 for most of our customers, and they do some phishing. They'll do some scanning before it comes in. Sometimes you have to pay for an extra license to get that level. A lot of the endpoint protection we were talking about that goes on the computers will also attempt to filter those out. A sandbox is typically what that means is that they're checking the emails in a sandbox. You know, they call it the sandbox in the cloud before it reaches your email for security things. So there's different ways to go about it. If you get a good endpoint protection program, it's also going to help try to pull that out. And, you know, Gmail and Microsoft is going to do some of that. And then in combination with the endpoint protection. And then, you know, when we're setting stuff up for a company, then we kind of get into sandboxing and some extra licenses that will take it a step further.
Okay.
But you know, you may want to look when you choose your endpoint protection if it's trying to help look for phishing emails as well.
Okay, thanks. Just that I
Mhm.
mentioned it. Mhm.
This is kind of a very big picture take at it, but I think at the end of the day, you know, one of the main things we're trying to protect is our finances. And one of the, well, I was going to say easier. It takes a little bit of time to do this, but there's, you know, the 3 different credit bureaus, and it's not a bad idea now to lock down your credit at these 3 different credit bureaus. So we put the hyperlinks there where you can just fill out a form online to do that. You might have to set up an account at each one and, you know, keep track of your information for those. And then if you ever go to apply for a car or home loan, new credit card, you will have to go in and unlock it for them to run the credit check on you. But they typically have a 30 or 90-day kind of unfreeze so that it will open it up for people to, you know, to allow you to open up the account that you need. But
Yeah,
this
they
just,
actually have a 24-hour time frame too, I believe, because
okay.
this
So
is
you,
one thing that we have our clients do or put it on their to-do list if they haven't been doing this to make sure that they freeze their credit. So,
yes.
yeah.
It's and you know, it's not too bad. You can do it online. Hopefully you don't need to get on the phone with them because we all know how that can go. But you know, it really locks things down pretty good. And if you think you've been hacked or know you have, we tell people they absolutely need to do this. But I know that we do it as a family, just as a rule of thumb, because it's not that difficult, and we feel like it kind of keeps things, you know, locked down.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And all the information's there so that, you know, your shortcuts will be on those links for you to quickly get to the forms you need to fill that out.
Sounds great.
Your Wi-Fi in your house, you know, we recommend strong passwords. You don't want people on the street, you know, or whatever to be able to get into your network for obvious reasons. A strong password is typically considered 12 characters or more, you know, 15 is even better. With these new NVIDIA, you know, cards and faster computers, if you have a weak password, you know, they can often crack these things in under 5 minutes. So, you know, I guess 12 to 15 characters would be recommended. We do recommend.
And you know, Wendell, also not to use the same passwords for repetitive things.
Yes, exactly. Because if someone, that's right. If you don't want someone finding out one of your passwords and it works for every last thing you log into. And the MFA does help protect against that a little bit too, because even if they have your password, then they need the code from your phone. But that doesn't mean you should still use the same password. Different passwords, which can be overwhelming, but when you get used to the idea of a password manager, it takes the complexity out of it. So I think we have a slide on the password managers where I can go into that a little bit, but yeah, different strong passwords. The password managers are also going to let you just automatically generate a random strong password that, you know, you can then use the password manager to help you sign in and not have to memorize, you know, 30 different passwords. You know, circling back to the Wi-Fi router, the guest network, every Wi-Fi router has that option. We do recommend that, you know, obviously if you for guests in your house, but I use it for all my smart devices in the house. So we have smart switches and Alexa devices. And I mean, I don't know if this is good or bad. I probably have 40 smart devices in my house. And so we put all those on the guest network to keep it separate from our main network. So even though it's on the same router, it isolates that traffic over here. And you know, with the IoT or, you know, what is it, Internet of Things, these smart devices could be compromised. And then if it's on your main network, it's more likely to potentially be able to get onto your main computer. So
That's a great idea.
yeah, as a rule of thumb, I just set up a guest network for all those devices too to keep them isolated. If you can figure out how to log into your router, which you can typically Google, and you remember the password that you set up for it, make sure the firmware is up to date. They're constantly trying to lock those down further. And there's some very high-end routers you can purchase that are expensive, and for companies we do that. But for your home, we're a fan of the ASUS routers because they come with something called AI protection, and it has an extra layer of protection in there that will kind of help you against ransomware and malicious URLs. That just all happens in the background, and you can just turn that AI protection on. And, even if you had a smart device that was trying to go back to a website or a URL that was known to be malicious, it would just block it in the background. And there's no extra charge for that. So we're a big fan of this ASUS because it's one of the few routers that does that. Most routers do not have that built in as a free service. And it's not essential that you have that, but as an extra layer for no extra cost, we do like that with the ASUS routers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Password managers, it's probably time to consider getting one. We put it off even as an IT firm for probably longer than we should have. But they really do simplify things once you kind of get over the hump of getting into the system. So we use Microsoft Authenticator, and it's a password manager, and it generates the MFA code. So that's all kind of in one spot. And then we've actually started to use Microsoft Edge as our primary browser. And if you sign into Edge with the same account that you sign into your Microsoft Authenticator, any passwords you put into your web browser on your computer will also show up on your password manager on your phone, and vice versa. So the password manager will also manage, passwords for all those apps that you log into on your phone, which is nice because we all have about 10 of those that we're logging into, and that will be included. So you will kind of get syncing between the browser and the Microsoft Authenticator. If you use Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge has come a long way. So I just have kind of migrated from Chrome over to that. There are extensions you can buy, for Chrome to try to get the passwords, over to Microsoft Edge so that and then there's third-party password managers like Bitwarden, and I wouldn't recommend LastPass because they were hacked recently, which, sometimes you feel like no matter how hard you try, the password, but LastPass was actually one of the biggest ones, and so I'm not recommending them at this point. So the third-party password managers also will allow you to log into Chrome and your phone and Edge and Firefox, and it's much more cross-platform than just Microsoft Authenticator. But there's also a little bit more overhead, and I think that we have kind of settled on suggesting to people maybe they use Microsoft Edge, save the passwords there, and use Microsoft Authenticator. If you want to get a little bit deeper into it, you can get a third-party password manager as well. And the other thing is, when you're going to make a password, you can right-click on the password field and say, suggest a strong password. It'll throw a 15, randomly generated 15-character code in there that will automatically be filled in next time you come to that website, so you don't even have to bother remembering it because your browser will have it memorized. So
interesting.
Yeah, and then I guess we have a note on the iCloud keychain. Yeah, that would work. NordPass. There's some different ones you can use out there.
Okay. All right. Gosh, that is it. Thanks, Wendell. Really
You're welcome.
appreciated the rundown there. And I do think, given all of this information, I think sometimes it's good for people to have, just like you have other people helping you do things, having an IT specialist helping you do this. So whether it's a quarterly check-in with a particular person to make sure all the things you're doing are up to speed, or you have questions about how to do some things, it really helps to advance that learning curve. So I thought we had on our website a listing of IT providers, and it is not there. So we are going to be putting that on probably over the weekend. Maybe it'll be there this coming week. But it's a small list of people, and Wendell's on it at the top. So, but I just thought I would mention that because some of this can be so overwhelming, and you can get some of this together, and then the ball keeps moving, and you need to keep up with it, and you need a way to keep up with it. So that might be a solution for some people. Part of the budget, but probably a very important component now with the learning curve needing to continue to expand here in this area. It's you just don't want to get too far behind on it. So
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you.